Thank you so much for that. Very interesting topics and a lot of different perspectives here when it comes to tokenizing the enterprise. You just finished your talk about what are all the opportunities for enterprises when they go ahead and tokenize. What are the limitations? What things should they also be thinking about that might, complicate their business model or bring them, bring their business model more security vulnerabilities? What are the downsides?
That's a great question. So I think the easiest principle to consider here is cost and efficiency at the bottom of things. So in the traditional model, we obviously have economies of scale that have made sense for certain companies to be centralized in manners. But when it comes to a very decentralized model, it really only makes sense when the cost of centralization is too high, that it doesn't justify the economies of scale. So far in terms of where our technology stands, for example, in supercomputing, it's still much more efficient to have a supercomputing center rather than to decentralize that. Obviously, there are plenty of projects working on revolutionizing that and changing that, but it's important to think about cost and efficiency when making this decision. It's not a natural fit for all companies.
Right. Today, if you kind of look at the companies that are going out, doing an ICO or tokenizing, whatever you want to call it, when it comes to costs, I actually feel like in terms of cost efficiency, a lot of costs go up, right? There's a dearth of talent in the blockchain space, and so everyone who even has 2 months of blockchain experience has that blockchain premium. You're paying them a crazy salary, right? You're going to spend a lot more on security, for example, and so. Are we there yet in terms of cost efficiency? And if not, how long do you think it'll take us to get there?
Yeah, I think that a lot of projects that are out there doing some ICOs, a large percentage, you just add blockchain, and it's a good way to raise some money, and doesn't bring that much value per se. So. You really have to look if today if blockchain solves the problem or not, or if just a central database does the job perfectly. Generally, if there's today it's mostly censorship resistance, where you for some stuff that you just cannot do in the normal life, a blockchain can help do it, then it really solves the problem for sure. And after, I guess to have some other models where you can provide the value of the blockchain on the cost basis, I think we're pretty far away. Some projects that have raised on these programs, at least they have some funding to keep going and get to that point on where the technology is ready. But definitely it will take some more time on that. But the good thing in some ways is that there's more some more money in the space, and it brings a bubble is always part of these cycles, but it drives innovation, it drives new people in the space, it drives new talents, and driving new talents to solve some of the big issues is important. So that's the bullish part where I'm in.
Sounds good. Anyone else want to weigh in on the whole cost efficiency perspective?
Well, I think Shuonan was referring to not only just the human cost of running that. Speaking from someone who runs a blockchain company, yes, developers are expensive, but
everyone's expensive.
Everyone's expensive. Staffing is only a portion of your total expense, and then. What a lot of people don't realize is when you're running an ICO, the solidity programming component of it is actually a very small part. You still need DevOps, you still need front end, and you got to do your marketing and legal and stuff. So, which I'm sure you understand.
I absolutely agree with Michael, and I think on the talent point, really quickly, it's really interesting because with new models that tokenization have created, there's also new ways that we've seen startups be able to incentivize early developers, just contribute to project with the ultimate incentive being the token itself, rather than necessarily upfront costs. Obviously, you also have a lot of open source communities that have incentivized developers purely based off of the whole concept of bring everyone together in such a community. So I think we'll also get new ways of involvement and stakeholders coming in as well.
So that actually brings up a really interesting topic, because you mentioned open source, decentralization. Now, we're talking right now about very traditional enterprises. Some of them, just even walking into the office, they're going to make you sit there and sign an NDA or a confidentiality agreement, right? So what gives? What is it going, will enterprises start going down this path towards open sourcing, being a lot less protective about their trade secrets or their information?
I think when it comes to decentralization overall, it's important to think about what types of businesses can naturally be more automated than others. So for example, if you have a very human-heavy job, it might be harder to automate. But for example, for something like insurance, you can imagine how a lot of insurance claims where the entire process could be easily automated without the human and operational costs. So you could say, essentially design the system in a way that you could handle with if and then statements. If this person pays their monthly premiums, and if their medical claims are accurate, then I issue out a payment. So there are several things or industries more broadly that could be more easily automated in that type. And people with a certain belief in how the insurance system could be structured could come together for that. Now, there are also other industries, for example, such as a company like Google, where it makes it a lot harder to decentralize. So I think it really depends on the nature of their business.
Fantastic. Yeah.
So when I think about tokenizing an existing business, I think about a couple things. One is, is making records immutable and permanent and open where anybody can take a look at it? Is that valuable to the current ecosystem? And that's not 100% the case. Most of the cases you can have immutable records, but you can only allow certain people access with that, and you control that access. So that's one. Another one is centralized versus decentralized. Do you need speed? How much are you writing on the blockchain? Because that's expensive.
Yeah.
Storing data is expensive, and blocks, depending on which chain you use, can be slow. And the last one is like security. Equifax, I believe, was just hacked, and so is it better to have a centralized place of storing records, or is it better to have it decentralized, immutable, and whoever kind of owns access to that address can reveal that address to whom they want to?
So going back to the topic of, enterprises are special. They have certain special needs. I often hear the rhetoric of, we don't yet know which one blockchain is going to be the one or win it all, right? And I think that's such an interesting assumption, because I'm not sure if there's going to be one blockchain. Given that, enterprises have all these special needs, do you think they're going to be adopting perhaps a public blockchain? Or do you think there will be a lot of little blockchains, maybe one for specific verticals, one for, public companies? Given the fact that they have certain sensitivities, maybe it can't be fully immutable, maybe there's some privacy or confidentiality concerns.
Yeah, I think for like some of the use cases, like enterprise, they will need like just like the database part of the blockchain, and to be able to collaborate between different entities, and that will be necessary. But and after they can use like a blockchain for a specific use case. If you need to record some information in an immutable way, then you would probably favor like a blockchain like the Bitcoin one, for example. And after there's also all the enterprises. I don't see like the innovation that is generally driven by the incumbent. So you would mostly have like the nice innovation coming from, well, nice or not, but innovation coming from like newcomers that don't need to have an enterprise anymore in some way. Like when you start building like a new protocol, a decentralized application, there's no more there's no more enterprise. It's just like a contract and some tokens. So there's no, and a foundation developing or community developing the decentralized application. So there's old style enterprise and new style enterprise that are emerging.
Yeah, following up on what Thomas was saying is that the beautiful thing right now in the ecosystem for enterprises is that they have a lot of choices, and everybody is fighting for their business. So
Yeah.
you have a different one blockchain or probably multiple blockchains for every anything they want, every use case they could have. So it's really about getting the right team and deciding which one is the best.
So I think a good way to contextualize that as well is to think about, take for example, loyalty and rewards programs, right? So that's something where it almost seems obvious that they should all be connected in some sorts of ways. But how the system has naturally evolved hasn't ended up being quite that.
Yeah.
So there's been lots of established companies within the enterprise world that are thinking about obviously moving that onto the blockchain and thinking about, well, should that be a private blockchain among, for example, only Star Alliance members where only we get to share air miles? Or should that be more of a public system where anybody who wants to be a part of this could be a part of our rewards program? So I think it's going to be more of the actual ecosystem working itself out just through implementation.
Very interesting. Michael, I want to turn to you for a second because your company is specifically applying blockchain and tokenization not just to the financial services industry, but to the lending industry. And I find that really fascinating because, for anyone who's worked in financial services, lending has all different sorts of issues that hopefully blockchain can solve. Can you tell us what some of those issues are and what you kind of hope blockchain will do for the lending industry in the next couple of years?
Yeah. So what we do is a little different from what some of our peers in the credit blockchain space do, such as Salt, Request, Ripio. I think our peers are trying to solve the issues that you mentioned. Lending, collateralized borrowing, automated loan applications.
Syndication, yeah.
Exactly. The credit protocol is just a way to immutably record and store that loan or credit and debt obligations on the blockchain. So we're just focusing on the recording layer at the moment because all those other things we talked about, those can all be built at the application layer. But and I know this is. It's not sexy stuff like collateralized lending or peer-to-peer lending, but it's foundational work that there needs to be more protocols to fill in the gaps that allow the consumer-facing application layer to interact with the base blockchain layer.
Interesting. So I don't know if you know this. I used to be general counsel of a fintech startup that did, to an extent, loan syndication, peer-to-peer lending, and one part of the process that I hated was sitting there and, having to go after defaulted borrowers who we didn't even know until after we gave the loan had terrible lending histories, had defrauded people, right? How can we use blockchain to solve that?
Well, so Lender is an interesting application of that. So, our Salt or Request Ripio, they're not really out yet with building something that you and I can easily use on our phone in a format that we're used to. Just going to the Play Store or going to iOS store to download. And so Lender, it is building a database of loan obligations and repayments for a particular ETH address or for any particular address. So we're one of the first, because we're making it so easy for consumers to use. We will be building this database of loans and repayments to kind of populate the first credit history on the blockchain.
Thomas, I want to turn to you for a second because increasingly, I think as was mentioned in each of your presentations, enterprises are seriously considering tokenizing either their securities offerings as equity or an actual product. But you're saying that there's a lot of security concerns that people should be thinking about What are you seeing as perhaps best practices today? You know, what are Overstock and Microsoft doing, and what departments handle this? Is it security, the security department? Is it the finance department? Is it a conglomeration of both?
So I think that a lot of the use cases, enterprise use cases of blockchain are still right now at an early level. And we've been like engaging on some of these around like smart meters to record like electricity consumption and record it on the blockchain, emit a token and all that. So there's some use cases here and there on different various type of topics, but we are still at a POC stage, or proof of concept, or maybe very early pilot. And the thing is that at that stage, well, you're about like trying to, your objective is to demonstrate that what you're doing is useful. Does it solve a problem? Can you have some efficiency gain? All these kind of stuff. And well, if there's nothing to secure, who cares about security, you know? So it's mostly about like trying to find out if something works or not. So in these use cases were absolutely useless. Us, Ledger, as a company, we provide tools to secure private keys and sign cryptographic message for blockchain application, but there's nothing to secure, we are totally useless. So where we actually see some people looking to integrate that, it's some consortium, obviously, they think about the different ways to secure that in the global picture, and there are some teams working on that, but on things out there in production, it's really about crypto assets. And I think there's, we see some application and some type of decentralized application that uses our API to integrate our products in their decentralized application. And today there are some like around, at least the one I can talk about, it's around decentralized exchange. Mm-hmm. So like all the decentralized exchange out there, like whether it be 0x, AirSwap, Kyber, and others, while starting to integrate our products directly on that. So why? Because well, there's a need to secure the tokens have a value, and you want to secure that in that purpose. We see that also like in prediction markets. You will need to vote for an event. You will need to put your keys at work in some ways, and these keys have values. You want to secure them. Other decentralized application would be also like in the security tokens. So you've got some securities. You emit them on a token, on a blockchain-based token. It has a value. You want to secure it. So. We are really useful when there's something to secure, and we see that like mostly like in these type of decentralized application, crypto asset obviously as well. And in the enterprise world, I'm pretty sure there will be a lot of things, and there's a lot of incredible potentials for that, but it's still not there yet, and our products are not a fit because there's nothing to secure.
Right. I think when I think about tokenizing the enterprise, it almost seems like this meeting of two different worlds, right? It's like the crazy crypto blockchain world meets, you know, the concerns of the real world. And so, given that, what pieces of the puzzle do you think still need to be solved, or be teased out a little further in order to ease enterprises on the blockchain? So, for example, like my company, right? We do dispute resolution because if I were general counsel of an insurance company that was just putting all our insurance policies on the blockchain, on smart contract, and I woke up one day and it automated the payout of all these claims and bankrupted the insurance companies, I feel like that would be not just my job on the line, but like everyone in the company's job on the line, right? So what are the missing pieces that we still need to see to get enterprises into this new world?
Well, I think, first off, it seems like your problem could use the credit protocol.
Okay.
In your dispute resolutions and everything. But, and I think the answer of your question goes back to your previous question to Thomas is, how do you get enterprises on board? And we get approached a lot.
Yeah.
By companies who want to tokenize their existing products. I've been surprised, probably should not be surprised to find that it comes from different people within different parts of the organization. Because enterprises, they're big organizations. People who head those organizations have been there for a while. And I mean, I come from JP Morgan, and there's a lot of turf wars that go around in an existing enterprise. And for the person who's championing usually a new innovative solution, it's not going to be viewed. Not everybody's going to jump on board it, and probably the people that are fighting turf wars against, they're going to really make them pay for it if it doesn't succeed. So there's a lot of downside, and on the upside, they might not get all the credit that they deserve for it. People might just say, they got lucky. So yeah, I think that is a huge problem in terms of getting enterprises on board, just based on my experience.
So I also wanted to take a quick step back as well. I absolutely agree. But there's also different depths of involvement a certain enterprise could have within the blockchain space. Obviously, the deepest being that they tokenize their fundamental business, but the lightest being that they could just even get a consulting project to see how they could even start to adopt blockchain. And somewhere in between comes partnerships with startups, comes with other business initiatives or investments into startups, and a variety of other shades of being involved. But I think also tokenizing the enterprise is such a big overall term that it's important to think what the enterprise even means. Usually there's a couple of different layers involved. There's obviously the infrastructure layer, there's a platform layer, and then there's the application layer. So depending on the nature of that specific enterprise business, they could be involved in a variety of ways. So for example, there are companies that are really looking to build infrastructural projects that focus on providing better storage or better compute. But then you also have application layer plays where it could be a more specific or direct involvement.
Great. We have maybe time left for one question. So my last question, we can just go down the row, is what do you think are going to be the first verticals or industries to really adopt not just blockchain, but tokenization? Want to start?
Yeah, I think like around everywhere there's like some exchange to record these exchanges, or financial industry exchanges are definitely some that will be disrupted and can potentially adapt using that technology.
Well, I might sound a little biased here, but I think the credit space will. We're already seeing it. It's not even a question, right? So we're seeing a lot of my peers trying to solve the peer-to-peer lending or the collateralized loan, and eventually, once we have a good set of data for people to use, automated crypto loan applications, et cetera.
So I think before we look forward into the future, it's important to also review what's already happened in the past.
Yeah.
Where in the past within the US, for example, we see companies like Kik offering their own coin. We also see Kodak offering its own coin.
Yep.
So there are specific companies that have already started to do this. And also within the US, especially the cross-border space, we see a lot of on-demand companies starting to offer their own coins. So for example, for the first time, you see bike-sharing startups that are now offering their own coins in exchange for whether it's used as a utility or as used for financial investment purposes. So I think with that as the background, I think going forward, just from a lot of conversations and from business trips as well, I've already seen some of the top-tier crypto funds in China systematically helping establish businesses essentially through the process of tokenization, especially in the on-demand space. So I think that will continue to be a prominent trend for the upcoming year.
Very interesting. Well, thank you so much for joining the panel and for all your very interesting insights. Can we give them a round of applause?